America may have experienced challenging decades of presidencies. Over the course of its history since independence from the British Empire, there have been a total of 46 presidents. Beginning with George Washington, often hailed as the father of the nation, who led American forces during the War of Independence, the journey of the presidency unfolds. John Adams, Washington's vice president, was the first to reside in the White House and notably abstained from owning slaves despite his influential position. On the contrary, Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, owned hundreds of slaves, highlighting the contradictions of the time. James Madison, America's smallest president, presided during the War of 1812, a conflict that saw British forces capture Washington and burned down the White House and the Capitol, an event that has not recurred since. James Monroe's doctrine aimed to deter European interference in the Americas, though its application often served American interests at the expense of Latin American nations such as Panama, Cuba, and Venezuela. John Quincy Adams, the first to be photographed and inaugurated, wearing trousers, faced various challenges, but left a mark on American fashion. Andrew Jackson, the first Democratic president, was known for dueling and the controversial Indian Removal Act, which displaced many Native Americans. Martin Van Buren holds the distinction of being the initial president born post-America's independence. Renowned for his adept political acumen, he earned the nickname the Little Magician, owing to his remarkable capacity for orchestrating and aligning various political factions. William Henry Harrison delivered what could arguably be considered the lengthiest inaugural address in recorded history, undeterred by the bitterly cold weather and freezing rain. Tragically, shortly after his inauguration, Harrison fell ill with pneumonia and passed away 32 days into his presidency, thus marking the shortest tenure in U.S. presidential history. Historians generally regard John Tyler's presidency unfavorably. Upon assuming office, he found himself at odds with his own party, the conservative Whigs, leading to his eventual expulsion. This internal conflict resulted in strained relationships and numerous challenges throughout his tenure. However, it is noteworthy that Tyler fathered an impressive 15 children, a record unmatched by any other U.S. president in history. James K. Polk's presidency was characterized by a lack of excitement, to the extent that he prohibited liquor in the White House and adhered to rigorous 12-hour work shifts. His demeanor was marked by seriousness, sobriety, and a notable absence of humor. Despite this, Polk's tenure saw significant expansion of U.S. territory through the controversial means of provoking war with Mexico, resulting in the acquisition of 1/3 of its land. Zachary Taylor, a celebrated general and revered national figure, dedicated 40 years of his life to serving in the U.S. military before assuming the presidency. However, his limited political background presented numerous hurdles as he ventured into the realm of governance. Tragically, his presidency was cut short after 16 months due to his death from a stomach flu. Millard Fillmore exemplified how even a somewhat unremarkable individual could achieve the American dream through competence, as described on the White House's official website. Frankly, his most notable claim to fame is his marriage to his schoolteacher, whom he deeply loved. When Franklin Pierce was just 12 years old, he orchestrated a bold escape from his boarding school, bravely trekking 20 kilometers to reach his parents. Yet, upon arrival home, his father insisted he immediately return, even amidst a raging thunderstorm. Pierce later reflected on this event as a pivotal moment in his childhood and the shaping of his future career. Remaining unmarried throughout his life, James Buchanan holds the distinction of being the sole president never to marry. He was once engaged to Ann Coleman, but their relationship ended abruptly following a dispute concerning other women Buchanan was involved with. Tragically, Coleman passed away that same year, with some speculating it was by her own hand. While recent presidents have been deemed forgettable by historians, this individual stands out distinctly. His lasting impact primarily stems from his monumental endeavors to eradicate slavery. Tragically, Lincoln's presidency was abruptly terminated when he became the first president to be assassinated. As the first Republican president and still the tallest to date at 6'4", Lincoln's legacy endures as a towering figure in American history. In 1867, an act was passed by Congress, forbidding the president from dismissing appointed officials. However, disregarding this act, Johnson notably dismissed his Secretary of War the following year. As a consequence, the House of Representatives voted to impeach him, marking the first instance of presidential impeachment in American history. Ulysses S. Grant's significant accomplishment lay in his relentless campaign to combat the Ku Klux Klan. This culminated in his endorsement of the Enforcement Act of 1871, which empowered the federal government to enforce martial law and prosecute individuals involved in Klan activities. The election of Rutherford B. Hayes sparked intense dispute, as both Hayes, representing the Republican Party, and Samuel J. Tilden, the Democratic candidate, asserted their claims to victory. This contentious situation culminated in the Compromise of 1877, whereby Hayes was ultimately declared the winner, albeit with concessions granted to the Democrats in exchange for their acquiescence. James A. Garfield became the second U.S. president to fall victim to assassination. As he readied himself to board a train in Washington, D.C., Garfield was targeted, suffering 2 gunshot wounds from a disgruntled office seeker who felt entitled to a government position. Despite the severity of his injuries, it wasn't the bullets themselves that claimed his life. Instead, it was the substandard and unhygienic medical care he received that ultimately led to his demise. Chester A. Arthur was known for his keen fashion sense. He took great care in his appearance and was often praised for his impeccable suits. He had a personal valet and owned more than 100 pairs of pants. Not a lot by today's standards, but it was quite the extravagance back then. Grover Cleveland, affectionately known as Big Steve, had a considerable weight of 275 pounds and struggled with a notable addiction to cigars and excessive beer consumption. Benjamin, the grandson of the 9th president, William Henry Harrison, uniquely formed the only grandfather-grandson duo to hold the presidency. Benjamin's tenure also marked a significant technological advancement as he introduced electricity to the White House. Struck with apprehension over this innovation, he took the precaution of employing a dedicated servant to operate the lights. Big Steve re-emerges into the spotlight, holding the distinction of being the sole U.S. president to serve 2 separate terms that were not consecutive. William McKinley became the 3rd president in U.S. history to fall victim to an assassination attempt. While attending an exhibition in New York City, he was fatally shot by an anarchist. The assailant concealed his weapon with a handkerchief wrapped around his right hand and approached McKinley under the guise of a handshake. Upon extending his hand, McKinley was met with 2 fatal shots. The shooter's motive stemmed from his discontent with McKinley's capitalist policies, which he perceived as favoring the wealthy elite at the expense of the working class. Following the assassination of President William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt assumed the presidency, becoming the youngest leader in the nation's history at the age of 42. Similar to his predecessor, Roosevelt also faced an attempt on his life while delivering a speech, yet he fortunately survived the ordeal. President William Howard Taft surpassed even Big Steve in size, weighing a staggering 330 pounds. Additionally, Taft made history as the first president to replace horse-drawn carriages with motor vehicles in the White House fleet, a move that likely brought relief to the overworked horses. Woodrow Wilson stands out as the sole U.S. president to have earned a Ph.D. His most prominent legacy lies in his pivotal involvement in the negotiations that concluded World War I. Wilson presented his renowned 14 points, outlining key principles for securing post-war peace, notably advocating for the formation of the League of Nations. Warren G. Harding, a president marked by controversy, is primarily recalled for his underhanded tactics in appointing close associates to key governmental roles, a decision that resulted in their exploitation of power for personal gain. Coolidge was popular for, well, doing nothing, often quoted as remarking that he dedicated much of his presidency to sidestepping major issues. Known for his quiet personality, he earned the moniker Silent Cal. Herbert and his spouse were both speaking Chinese, often conversing in the language to maintain privacy within the White House. Additionally, Herbert amassed a considerable fortune exceeding $100 million throughout his extensive career as a mining engineer and expert. FDR holds the distinction of being the longest-serving U.S. president, having been elected to 4 terms in office. He won the elections of 1932, 1936, 1940, and 1944. Despite being paralyzed from the waist down due to polio, Roosevelt led the nation through the majority of World War II, symbolizing resilience and leadership, even in the face of personal adversity. Harry S. Truman is most famously remembered for being the first and only leader to approve the deployment of nuclear weapons in history. On August 6, 1945, Truman authorized their use, targeting the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Eisenhower was the first president to ride in a helicopter. He loved it so much, he asked the Secret Service to replace limousines for short trips to and from the White House. Additionally, he witnessed the establishment of NASA, with Eisenhower granting approval for the inaugural U.S. space mission in 1955. John F. Kennedy met a tragic end as the final U.S. president to be assassinated. While riding in an open convertible with his wife, he was targeted by 3 mysterious shots. One pierced his neck, and another fatally struck him in the head, resulting in instant death. Johnson is primarily known for prolonging the Vietnam War by deploying an extra 500,000 troops during his term. This decision led to the loss of 60,000 American soldiers and the deaths of up to 1 million Vietnamese individuals. Richard Nixon, serving as a Republican president, gained notoriety due to his implication in the Watergate scandal. He orchestrated illicit surveillance operations against Democrats, which encompassed a break-in at their headquarters and covertly recording conversations within his own office. Eventually, Nixon was apprehended and compelled to resign from office. A notable aspect concerning Ford is that he survived 2 assassination attempts, both occurring in 1975 and in California, both perpetrated by women. He holds the distinction of being the sole individual in American history to ascend to the positions of vice president and president without being elected to either role. During Carter's presidency, the nation grappled with worsening economic challenges, characterized by significant increases in inflation, unemployment, and soaring gas prices. The situation became dire, leading to long queues as people waited for hours to fill up their cars with gas. Before venturing into politics, Ronald Reagan enjoyed a successful career in Hollywood, starring in 53 films over a span of 30 years. Renowned for his on-screen presence, he later gained fame as a politician, notably for implementing tax cuts that primarily benefited high-income earners. George Bush had a plethora of accomplishments to his name. In addition to serving as president, he earned distinction as one of the youngest pilots in U.S. Navy history. Furthermore, he achieved success in the oil industry and held prominent roles such as ambassador to the United Nations and director of the CIA at various points in his career. Bill?
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Were you aware that he was referring to his wife in that video? The younger Bush is primarily associated with 2 significant events: the conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. While historians continue to assess his legacy, Many believe that he prioritized U.S. self-interest in both instances, rather than solely focusing on the well-being of the nations involved. What are your thoughts on this assessment? As the first African-American president of the United States, Obama is chiefly recognized for the decisive action in eliminating Osama bin Laden, followed by the respectful burial at sea. Additionally, his eloquent speeches remain a prominent aspect of his legacy. Donald Trump is recognized for numerous accomplishments, yet what strikes us most is his expertise in the realm of finance. He holds a notable position, potentially setting a record for the highest number of bankruptcies and outstanding debts in American history. Joe Biden. Well, he loves chocolate chip ice cream, that is for sure.
My name is Joe Biden, and I love ice cream.